Welcome back to another Walk Around Wednesday. So this is where we take a quick look at some of the builds we have going on or some of the ones that we've completed, give you the ins and outs, the details without you having to follow the whole build process. So we're going to do a quick walk around of this one today. This is our 1972 CB750. Her name is Penny. We finished her a couple of years ago. Spent a couple of years building it. Just when I had some free time here or there, I put some hours in on it. Wasn't a lot, but we were able to get enough time in there to get it completed. This bike has been a lot of fun. We've taken it around to a couple of shows recently. We actually went down to the Hand-Built show in Austin, Texas. I don't know if you've ever been to that show, but that's one I have to say, go check that out if you're into motorcycles. It's more like an art museum than it is a motorcycle show. They only select a few that they have there showing. Man, just a lot of fun. Definitely check that out if you're into that kind of thing. But let's get right to it. That 72 CB750 started as a complete stock bike. In the old shop we were in, the guy next door had a bike museum and a Honda dealership, and we were looking for a CB750, and he had a ton of them. So he opened up his storage container, basically said pick one, and we found one that was in pretty good shape. Started out as just an orange, completely stock bike. Wasn't in the greatest shape, but definitely a good donor bike to build. So the one thing I wanted to do was build a cafe style bike. One thing that I started with that I knew I wanted to do was we had a vintage 70s fiberglass gas tank sitting around. And it was this little bitty tank. I mean, it was so small, but it looked just like this tank. And I kept putting it up there and I'm like, man, I love this tank, but I obviously want to build it. And it's just way too small anyway. So then it got me thinking, like, why don't I replicate this itty bitty peanut of a tank into a bigger version of that? So that's exactly what I did. On the tank, with all of our metal projects, we started with template board. We created the shapes that we wanted, and we were able to, out of cardboard, create the bigger 70s style tank that we wanted. Once we got that done in template board, transferred it over to metal, then started shaping it up. We started rolling the sides, we rolled the insert section, which was probably the hardest part of the tank just because of how it shapes the front and the rear. We then did a flush mount cap, we finished up the top, got it all TIG welded together, and then that's what we ended up with, a much bigger version of that 70s tank. I think it turned out bitchin', it looks really good. And just kind of following the process of the build, what I went into next, once I got the tank fit up, we were still on the stock frame. I was undecided at that point. So the neck of the CB750, the down tube, and the lower engine cradle is still stock to the CB750. But then the whole back half of the frame, I changed that up. I rolled all of that out of tube. I wanted to get rid of that sharp harshness of the CB750 where everything's just kind of butted and welded together. So I rolled a down tube that comes down to the rear sets, the swing arm there. I then ran a tube that runs across the back that goes under the cowl, and then ran another tube that goes from the cowl section down to the swing arm. Now these CBs have that triangle right here that everybody tries to clear out and open up, and once you do that, it looks really cool. I wanted a bigger version of that. So I wanted a really big, round triangle right there where you could just see the shock sitting there. The next thing we did after we got the frame finished up is we started to focus on the cowl. Now, since these 750 engines are a dry sump, it means you normally run an external oil tank. Some people do them in the swing arm. Some people mount a tank in various places throughout the bike, and my thought was I was going to do it in the cowl. So I then did the same thing as the tank, took template board, kind of shaped up the cowl that I wanted, and then created the cowl out of aluminum, got it all welded together and onto the bike. Now, it's not the oil tank. Ended up doing something different. So under the cowl is starter solenoid and a couple of other relays, a good place to hide those. Once I got that finished up, I went ahead and I made the seat pan so I could kind of fill the area right here and see what we were working with. So you can pop the seat off and you see we've got an aluminum seat pan. This is all wrapped in Apex leather, French stitch down through here. I love their leather, it looks awesome. We've got the M unit mounted under the seat so we can access all of our wiring right here. Super easy to get to if we have any issues. Seat just pops back into place, and that looks really cool. So once we got finished up with that, we moved on to the swing arm. So I was initially going to build a swing arm, and I started looking through swing arms, and I found a CBR F2 swing arm that I thought, you know what, that might work. And it ended up, it did work. I didn't have to modify anything at all. So that was one of those awesome surprises that you never think is going to happen. So that bolted right up in position. What I did do to modify it a little bit and give it a little more of that racer look was we put speed holes in it. So we drilled out the swing arm and we sleeved it, TIG welded all that up, and kind of beveled all of those edges just to give it a nice clean look. Once we got there, I wanted to make the rear into a roller, so I went over to Cognito Moto, got one of their Excel wheels. It's already spoked for you. We've got the hubs in it, and this wheel went directly onto the CBR swing arm. So they made it super easy on us. We were able to get the sprocket, the chain, everything from them to get the back of this thing a roller. And at the time we started building it, we had a single CBR shock in the back. It wasn't quite the spring rate we needed, so I was gonna have one built, but when I started kind of playing around with it, it turned out that if I did a dual CBR shock, we were gonna get exactly what we needed. So we ended up modifying the swing arm where the shock bolts in and under the frame where we could bolt in a dual shock. And I'm glad we went with this because it ended up just looking really cool having that dual setup. Looks really mean. Since we're already back here, the rear sets are Cognito rear sets that bolt right onto the CB frame. The shifter linkage and everything comes as a kit. You can bolt this thing right up and you're good to go. Same thing with the brake side. Comes with the brakes, caliper, master cylinder, reservoir, everything you need over there to bolt that right on. So if you're building one of these, I have to say that I didn't know them until I started building this bike, but Cognito Moto has absolutely everything to build one of these if you don't want to basically create it from scratch. So moving to the front end of the bike, also going to Cognito because they had a stem that would go into the CB750 frame but would allow us to bolt on a Yamaha R1 front fork setup. So we pressed that out, pressed the new stem in, and then we were able to get this bike into a roller. One thing we did in the front was, as opposed to running the forks where the caliper is in the back, I thought, what an easy way to switch it up. We flipped the forks from side to side to run the calipers in the front. To me, we're just giving it an overall, a little bit meaner look, and also an Excel wheel from those guys up front as well. So moving into the engine, we ended up not doing the oil tank in the cowl because we ended up finding a company that has a product called the Sump Thing. So if you're building one of these bikes, it's a really cool product to look into. It turns this into a wet sump. So basically a sump in the bottom, super easy to swap out, bolt in, and then we don't need an external tank anymore. So that made life a lot easier, and it also just looks really cool. Then on the engine, we bolted on the CR carbs that we run on any bike we build because they've got to be the best carbs out there. They're so responsive. Up front, we've got the Cognito triple trees. We've got the digital readout, all the brakes. The projector headlight is also from Cognito. Now on the projector headlight, we had this bike on CarFix where me and Fuller did a little bit on it, and we built the stainless steel headlight mount up front. So it bolts into the triple trees, really clean look. These lights are super bright, like crazy bright. After running one of these on this bike, I'll definitely run them on every bike from here on out. As far as exhaust goes, we've got stainless exhaust all the way back. We've got DEI header wrap on these. I like a lot of those guys' products, so I wanted to put it on this bike. On the fins of the engine, we notched out some of the fins and kind of brushed some gold in there to go along with the look of the bike. And then, you know, her name's Penny. Reason for that is when we were tearing this bike apart, we found some pennies, which was kind of weird in a bike. So as I was kind of putting it back together at the moment, I was thinking about colors, and I was looking at browns, and I thought, you know, we found those pennies. That's kind of cool. Maybe we go with like a copper color. And that just stuck. We started calling her Penny, and then so all the washers throughout the bike under the ARP bolts and everywhere else are all pennies. So don't tell the government. I don't want to get in trouble for drilling a few holes and a few cents. But if you look, we've got pennies all over this thing, which just kind of goes along with the name. So then for the paint scheme, we ended up going with like a copper look. I mixed these colors out of Glazerit. It's all custom colors. And then once I got done with it, somebody was like, man, it looks like a Duracell battery. And I was like, man, sure does. So then I started rethinking what I should have called it. But oh well, it's Penny. So one cool thing about the Moto Gadget M unit that you saw that's under the seat is this is the key. So check this out. So we mounted the key switch under the tank, so we'll take our key, stick it under here, you see the green light come on, now our bike is on. So we can come up to the switches up front, hit the button, and our bike's on. We can fire it up, everything kicks on and it's ready to go. If you want to cut it off, just stick it back on the key switch under the tank and it shuts everything down. What it also does is there is an app where you can download on your phone and you can actually cut the bike on and off from your phone. So that's pretty neat with the modern technology. Also with the tail light, we did a tail light housing back there and we did an infinity light. Mirror in there, there's mirror tint, there's an LED light. There's a lot going on in there that makes those lights look like they run forever, but when you hit the brake light, it's super bright and it looks like it's a mile long. So just a neat little feature to make it look custom and cool. And we also, under that M unit in the seat, we sheet metaled all that, so everything under the bike, when you look under, is slicked out, looks good. You don't see any of the tubing work under here, no wiring or anything like that. All the wiring from the M unit is ran through the tubing of the frame, so it's all hidden. I'm sure I'm leaving a ton of stuff out, but I just wanted to do a quick walkthrough. I actually get a lot of questions about this bike, so this is just a run through of what all we've done to it. If you have any questions about it, definitely drop them below, ask me, I'll be happy to answer them. If you need a t-shirt, we got a lot of merch over at the website, go check that out. And as always, please like and subscribe, it helps us a ton. And hope you guys enjoyed it. We need to build another bike. Now I want to go for a ride.